We are back with another culture content. Follow me on Instagram, Jay Doran underscore the culture man. Short 60, 45-second videos on business, life, culture, leadership. Go check me out on Jay Doran underscore the culture man on Instagram. And today I'm elaborating on one of those topics, which is four common employee retention mistakes. Four common employee retention mistakes. The purpose of this episode is to expand on that thought and try to get every morsel of knowledge, think through it with you. I have some notes here so that you could take action in your life. So number one, you remember four common employee retention mistakes. Number one is think about anything but money first. So think about that for a second. All the advice in the world, the last thing that people generally think is, oh, we're not paying people enough. Actually, that could genuinely be an issue. Now, we'll know if it's an issue relative to how well we know our people. Like, are we actually investing the time to get to know our people, their dreams, their aspirations, their wants, their needs? If we have a very large organization, how effective is our human resource department and the various leaders throughout the organization ability to get to know the people that work for and with them, to understand their aspirations, goals, desires, not at the level of a coaching program, because at the end of the day, what I've learned over time is not everybody has goals, aspirations, and desires. But we know if we can't help someone get clear on that, we know we can feel it when people are hurting. And a common mistake that employers make with when it comes to employee retention is thinking that or trying to convince themselves that it could be everything other than paying people better. And this is why it's relevant to talk about first, is because if an organization is being managed in a way that's creating value, then capital is flowing back into the business and it's growing because the people that are engaged in it they're engaged. They're paying attention. They're looking at the future. They're at the future through the past. They're in the present, and growth should be taking place. If growth is not taking place, there are other problems that have to be addressed, and then that poses another question: do we have the right advisors? Do we have the right plans? Are we working hard, or are we working smart, or are we working hard and smart? Growth and reinvestment into a business is going to lead to the a productive culture, at least from a productivity standpoint, where if it's, especially if the company's small, people, we can touch and feel and smell and talk and interact with one another. You're so close to the founding consciousness. There should be excitement. If there isn't, something's wrong. There should be buy-in. So I don't want to jump into values and all these things and skip over something that could easily be fundamental, and the avoidance of thinking about, are people earning enough? That shows poorly on ownership, management, those responsible for the organization. And keep in mind, your people might not want to share with you what their aspirations and goals are for whatever reason. It's alien to them. They have no idea, but you should know if they're hurting, if you're listening and paying attention, of any conscious about you, if they're hurting, and you try to reconcile that or have the conversations and be cognizant that that's a real thing. It actually matters. Like, what people earn matters, because the purpose of a company is not to become someone's life. That is not the ownership, those that benefit most from the equity growth. It's to provide resources for a person's real reasons they're working if they're employed by an organization, which will be their family, their future at that family, their community, their life outside of the business. That that is, it's not a giant leap of imagination to think that that would be really important for somebody that works for and with an organization. Now, if they're really bought in and bought into the future and they enjoy what they're doing, naturally there's going to be a higher investment of time and a lot of thought put into the deal, into the career, into the business. And that's part of the where profit comes, is a multiple of people's labor that don't own the business. That the ownership gets to the privilege of stewarding that profit. But this is where it's really important. Here's a mistake. I don't even think I had this written down, but a big mistake is like, that just does don't expect other people to do what you're not doing. And if you are doing it, don't rub it in their faces. Just do it. If you're the ownership, like, do it. Do the work. Be all in. And if you are all in, you're genuinely all in, you're going to be less conscious. You won't have a guilty conscience about what you ask of your people, within reason, within respect, because you're putting it all on the table. At the same time, you'll have more of a self-awareness naturally by actually being congruent with your thoughts and your words and your actions. You have more of a self-awareness to not be so damn hierarchically top down on the people, like expecting more of them than than than's inherent in the relationship of employee to employer. Now, everyone's built differently and has different aims, interests, desires as employees. Some people truly are all in wherever they go, and they're putting in more hours than anyone would ever ask of them, because that's how they're built. That's what they desire. They see the opportunity. That's a small minority, I would argue, statistically. And of course, a strong management is going to bring the best out of people to put it all on the playing field. At the same time, not expect them to destroy their lives. And their lives are more than their work. It's a part of their work. It's an important part of their work to build pride and identity. It's not everything. Family, community, their own lives, their values, what they do for themselves outside of work. So the first common mistake was to think about it's anything other than the money first. Money matters. It does. And how a business invests into the people, invests into itself, reinvests back into itself, reflects the values of the company and the vision of the company and the strategy of the company. Number two is, this is a mistake employers make around retention, is employers think that the core values exercise is going to solve it all. And to add to that, because it isn't, it's a component of aligning culture and curating an open society of thoughtful, creative, engaged people. But if we're doing the core value exercise and it's all about other people and what we expect of others, and it's not a self-awareness ritual to become more clear on our own, looking in the mirror ourselves, and the context is not, all right, these values are so that people can hold management accountable. No, not managing, hold the people accountable. That's backwards. Values transcend the hierarchy. Values are what everyone in the organization can hold everyone to by telling the truth and acting them out. It's acting them out and saying, hey, which core value are you living right now? Which core value? This core value, I don't think, like, if you're lower in the hierarchy, the value of the values is the person lower saying to the boss above them, I don't think we're living this value right now for this reason. Because the value helps the person with less power, influence, and authority superimpose themselves, where it's not about them versus the boss. It's about them representing the ideal, and it's less personal. And the boss is supposed to have the emotional awareness and intelligence to be able to take that feedback. The values protect everyone from themselves and each other. They're meant to be acted out. not just use as weapons against everyone. So when the management's doing the core value exercise and they're coming up with the values and how they want to make sure everyone lives to them, oftentimes that's beginning the exercise with a backwards assumption. It's like, how can others hold us to these? How can we hold each other to these? Not how can we conspire together to use them against the people below us in the hierarchy and the pecking order? Or how can we get rid of the people that we don't think live them? It's like, that's the most ironic thing. It's how can we have conversations around what they think we're living and vice versa. You got to be able to take what you give. That's so much easier said than done, depending on your emotional maturity. And as a recovering loser, I would say that, or one who's lost so much that affects your self esteem and increases insecurity, and would lead to the social, let's say, ostracization to go start a business to begin with. That resentment can only get me so far. That chip on the shoulder can only get me so far. Wanting to actually have smart, talented people work with me, I could tell you it's a process, and I just ask you to join me on it. So mistake number 2 is put the values on the wall, focus the value conversation around everyone but ourselves, and not realize that values transcend the hierarchy and they're there to protect everyone from each other and the institution, protect everyone from the institution, get the most out of the institution. And if you don't understand what I'm saying around though, don't feel too bad. It's confusing. I would listen to the value conversations I've had with Robert Freehafer on the podcast. We have like almost 20 episodes on that conversation. Robert Freehafer of Guardian Roofing and Siding around values. I would listen to the Chris Vester on values on the podcast. I would listen to Breaking Bread on the Culture Marriage podcast. I would listen to any episodes as of the last few months with Mike Calhoun of Board of Advisors on the Culture Marriage podcast. Those are all episodes on values you could listen to. Number 3 mistake employers make. If you fire people with respect and with direct communication, you will have less issue hiring / keeping people. A big mistake employers make when it comes to retention is they don't have the direct conversation. They wait too long. They avoid the tough conversations, which this will go to number 4. Or they'll do the henchman effect where somebody else has to do it. And the person in a position of authority, influence, and power never builds the emotional maturity from that uncomfortable conflict of having different points of view. And I know it can be scary, but it has to be done. Honest conversation has to be done. It makes us stronger. It makes us stronger as leaders, and it helps our conscience protect us from power, because power corrupts. Absolute power corrupts absolutely. Power corrupts proportional to our conscience. Our conscience's call to our brain, our mind, what have you, is proportional to the practice of having our values tested, which they're going to be tested in those social interactions of discomfort. Number 4 is, if you do number 3, then you will likely not have to worry about mistake number 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. There's other mistakes. All we do is make mistakes when we work. Life is problem solving. We're going to make mistakes because we can be responsible within our awareness. We are not in control of the world. Things are going to happen through our ability to relate to them. And we're responsible on a spectrum of awareness. We're accountable relative to how responsible we are, which is evolving, or it's like ebbing and flowing, digressing and improving. And there are so much happening to us and proportionally through us relative to our awareness and our ability to respond to conflicts, interpersonal, and everything outside of that. It's not just social and cultural, but economical conflicts. And life is problem solving. Business is problem solving. We're going to make mistakes. if you do number three, which is work on that direct communication, work on that living the values, being a responsible citizen, a responsible person, leader, then it's going to help number 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. There's lots of mistakes employers make because the whole thing is mistakes. We're taking risks. It's less about it risk, and we're taking risks. Even when we succeed, we still don't know the threshold of that success. Like we failed to some degree because it's not an absolute. We're succeeding on a spectrum. It's like inch by inch, and sometimes we fail big, but failure and making mistakes is so inevitable. What's within our ability to respond that we're responsible for is an open culture where there's trust to speak and so we can think and so we can act and that doesn't mean everybody stays or has to stay. It's not a cult. It's not a freaking closed society where you can't leave. Sometimes a business isn't the right thing. Just like for owners, founders and owners of businesses fall out of love every day with their businesses. So why the hell couldn't employees let people live their lives, for God's sake? So these are 4 mistakes that employers make. 4 common employer retention mistakes. Follow me, Jay Doran, Jay Doran _ the Culture Man on Instagram. It's another culture topic. And leave us a review on the Culture Matters podcast. Go check out those episodes of the Culture Matters podcast with Robert Freehafer, Mike Calhoun, investors on values. And we will see you next time on the Culture Matters podcast.